Hello, hello, hello. I am live and I am doing something a little different. Okay, it's working. All right, y'all. Hello, hello, y'all. It is Sunday morning, March 15th. I am back. as always. 11 a.m. is live on my Patreon. And I'm actually streaming live through Riverside because I am trying to ensure that I can. Oh, actually, I am not live at all. Hold on. I got to start the live. Hello, 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 y'all. Welcome, welcome. It is March 15th. I'm going to start this again. Hello, y'all. So I was talking thinking that I was actually live, and I was not live. So I was talking to my goddamn self. You made it, Grace. Welcome, y'all. Welcome. So if you listen to this episode outside of 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on Sunday, then you will be hearing two introductions because I was just talking because I'm trying to get fancy, y'all. I'm trying to get fancy. I got an announcement I'm going to make a little bit later in the show. Hey, Shay. So I upgraded my subscription through Riverside, right? These goddamn subscriptions, y'all, they killing me. You got to make this shit worth it. Because I was like, I do want to be able to go live on multiple platforms, namely my Patreon and YouTube. So, I think I'm fancy. I think I'm fancy, trying to be fancy technologically in a Mercury retrograde. Why would I do that? I don't fucking know. So then I'm sitting this morning. I'm thinking I got it, at least with the Patreon. I start talking. Oh, you got to hit live as well on Patreon for this shit to actually go through. So welcome from my double entry point, all right? If you are listening to this outside of Sunday morning, then that means you are catching my show on either my YouTube channel or on Spotify and Apple. And if you are interested in actually being able to engage, not just with me, but with other folks in the chat as I show up every Sunday morning to talk with the cosmos, then go ahead and join my Patreon. You can join at the free level, and you have access to all of my lives at that free level. But having access to the recordings in their entirety, plus other exclusive content, you will have to sign up at my groundscape level or higher. And tiers start at $5 a month, okay? I also got a newsletter, y'all. I found out Patreon makes a newsletter template, so I'm using that for now. So you can also check out, whoever is doing these emojis, I love you. Whoever's doing this emoji, cracking me up. So, but what was I saying? Okay, back to the point. Oh, newsletter. So I got a newsletter as well. So if you're also interested to see like what I'm up to, what the Patreon is doing, other things that are going on, you can subscribe there on my Patreon for free as well. And you can see that. And we're doing some cool things in the divination study aspects. We're playing with archetypes and stories, working with the Fool's Journey by having folks remake the story of the Fool's Journey using the tarot. And so we've gone through the Fool up to the Hierophant, I believe. Yes. And so this week, y'all, I will be back and we were going through the Lovers, number 6. Through the World, number 10, okay? And if you are in the dreamscape or soundscape level and higher, then we'll meet again next Monday, the 23rd, and we'll be sharing out the first 10 archetypes, all right? Okay, y'all. There's a lot of shit going on this week, okay? Well, I keep saying that, but welcome to 2026. Welcome to world building. Welcome to what it means when societies collapse. People talk about the revolution. Well, baby, it's here. It's been here. So what are we going to do with it, right? What you going to do with it? And that's really the energy that we are in right now. What are we going to do with it? All right? We got a new moon coming. We got shit going direct finally. We have seasons changing. Everything is in flux. So again, what is your relationship to change, all right? Let's get into it. Spring is here, or at least the introduction to the season this week as we have the sun making its way into Aries, which is also the spring equinox, as Mercury finally will also go direct. But before the sun meets the head of the fire, we have a new moon in Pisces, the last of a series of 28 degrees, the Cancerian degree. In a conversation with both Uranus and Mercury, this new moon is one that is asking us to dream for something radically different. Something actually new that bends the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, family, care, justice, relationship, money. These stories are the building blocks of any society. So what do you dream of at the foundations, at the feet, at the roots of what could be possible, of what could be real healing of our connections to our own humanity via coming into the body? So we move from Pisces dreaming into action and strategy of Aries. It is the sacred being redirected into the mundane. Because what is actually sacred is the mundane. This is the weekly forecast for March 15th to the 21st. Aries season begins. Fire is here. So what you gonna do with it? Welcome back to Yapping with the Stars, the show where I talk about what it means and takes for us to become human once again in a world that is trying to convince us that this is all there is. And it's not. So let's talk with the cosmos and see what else is possible. I'm your host and guide, Dr. Nicole Rouse, a storyteller who comes from a line of storytellers who weave and tell stories in many different ways. And as an anthropologist, astrologer, and artist, I work with astrology and ethnography to explore the stories of what it means for us to be human. Because right now the present is up for grabs. So who is leading the stories that will bring us into our futures? Now, every Sunday we check into the chaos that we call society and ask two questions. What's the cosmos showing us this week? And what are we being called to move, create, burn, build, and or reflect upon? Y'all, reflection. This is really interesting. This retrograde has been retrograding, all right? I'm usually one of those astrologers that's like, don't fearmonger. It's not always about technology fucking up. Well, Mercury said, ho, let me show you what's going to happen this time around. So it's been a really interesting time of reflection because honestly, I've had different tech issues. I've had other folks who I'm supposed to work with. They've had tech issues. So things have really had to actually slow down. It's time of reflection and review, right? Because it's Pisces. It's the end of something, the end of a cycle. It's the end of a season. Mercury is retrograding and coming direct as the sun moves into Aries. So it truly is a time of a year-long reflection, essentially, of a collective. Collectively, we are being asked to kind of review about how the hell we got here. Right? How the fuck did we get here? Well, it was a collective action, right? And it's not always necessarily, we can think of it as doom and gloom because we've gotten here because of collective action, right? So I want you to think about the actions that you've taken especially over the past year and what has now emerged, what has shown itself, right? What is the kind of end product? And then what do you do with that, right? Is it the end of something? Is it a seed being planted? So now you can reflect to see what does and does not come with you, right? Is it something that has to has come to its ending, but it did what it needed to do? The review is here for a reason, y'all. It's reminding us that we have to play with time, otherwise time will play with us. Because how much, and I talked about this last week, how much has time felt like it is slipping away from us? Right? We talk about time blindness and folks talk about coming into, different diagnoses and stuff. But I think a lot of us are time blind because in order to be in time, you have to be present, right? Present in the moment. But how many of us are present in the moment? Because that will require a reflection. And I really do believe this is what's been going on, this mix of Pisces energy. Because you have to remember right now, we have a lot of energy in Pisces and Aries. It's split, okay? As of today, on Sunday the 15th, we have the North Node, we have Mercury retrograde still, we have Mars, we have the Sun. That's all in Pisces. Then next door, you've got Neptune, Saturn, Chiron, Venus, okay? What's buttressing that? You've got Jupiter hanging out in Cancer. You got Uranus over in Gemini, or in Taurus, and then you've got Pluto over in Aquarius. So there is these kind of outer planets, because Jupiter is an inner outer planet. You've got these kind of more outer planets observing, but a lot of the energy is at the feet and the head, okay? And so there's an ending and a beginning. But there's also a seed that's being planted in this ending because it's Pisces, it's the deep waters, there's no floor, right? The floor is a bit nebulous, so you got to find the floor. Your feet become the floor. So what have you been building? What's been built? What do you want to build and why? And are those things that you are building upon, again, your dreams or somebody else's? This is why we're having the connection between the feet and the head. Because the head right now is being ruled by and being led by the crone Saturn. Next to Neptune, and you got Venus there. There is a bending of our conceptualizations around concepts that we have been told are supposed to be somehow rigid, somehow set in stone because of the stories we were told. Told about what? Well, let's see what Venus and Saturn represent. What we were told about gender, about love, about money, about justice, about what a relationship is, about systems and structures, about time itself, about what it means to create structures and systems that are timeless when we don't understand what time is, because we think the minute that we can mark time, somehow we are in control of it. So Neptune is here in Aries as well, saying, well, is any of this true? Does any of this make sense? What is the story that is emerging in the present? Are you present to begin with? So when we have this new moon that's coming in Pisces on the 18th, excuse me, right before we have the seasons change on the 20th, this new moon is in a conversation with a lot of things going on. The new moon is having a conversation not just with the sun and moon itself. Remember, a new moon is the sun and moon coming together, so it's a dark moon. It's a dark night. It is the darkness that you are planting, again, the seed that is going to grow, that full moon, giving it full light so you can see what it is, make the connections, reassess, re-examine. See, even in the moon cycles, there is times of reflection. And the moon is the fastest moving transit. So if the moon is the fastest moving, quote unquote, planet, it's a luminary. If that's the fastest moving thing, and even in that moon cycle, there is still time to reflect. Even in 28 days, where do you give yourself the permission and also take the time to reflect so that you are understanding what your feet are planting? You can figure out if those are the dreams that are actually yours. You can ask yourself to go into the kind of nebulousness of the imagination, explore. And in doing so, then what is coming up? Because Mercury is there. Mercury is hanging out next to, right, this kind of conversation happening. So then what is coming up for you? What are the seeds that need to be planted? That then once the moon and the sun move into Aries very quickly after that, because it's a 28-degree new moon. It's not an early degree. It's a late degree. So Pisces is saying you're going to plant this seed and then you're going to take some goddamn action 2 days later to make sure that it's going to come into action, come into reality. Because what we are learning right now, y'all, going from Pisces into Aries, is that what is actually sacred is the mundane. That is where the sacredness lies. Sacredness lies in you being able to come into the body, be embodied, and allow yourself to then move that body and take that dream that you imagined individually and collectively, and then realize if, quote unquote, we're only going to save ourselves and one another, then the saving comes in the construction of the new structures, the new systems, the new kinds of ways we engage with time. And in order for us to do that, we have to do that through a re-engagement of our understanding of relationships. The relationship to first the self, the head, via the body. And then that allows us to connect to other bodies, which allows us to connect to the land, to connect to the environment around us, because that is how you create culture, y'all. When we talk about this idea of connecting to the land, of pouring libations on the land, of talking to a tree, that is not woo-woo. That is reminding you that without that tree that is filtering this air, that allows us to breathe alongside that ocean, because the ocean is really the lungs of the earth. The trees has helped filter this shit. Without that relationship to that tree and ensuring that the tree is connected and connected to other trees, because trees talk to each other. When one tree is dying, it understands the importance of the ecosystem, so it will pour out its energy to other trees and its roots. But then what do you get from that so-called death? You still get life and mushrooms. You can still eat from the dead, because it's not fully dead. It's in a death cycle. It's in a cycle. It's in a relationship to death and life, right? Mushrooms become the embodiment of what it looks like to have a relationship to death, because you can eat a mushroom. For most part, not all of them. Not all of them, y'all. Not all of them. Let me backtrack. Don't eat some shit and then say Dr. Rao said you can eat it. No, not all of them. Make sure you know what the hell you're eating, okay? But you know what I'm saying, right? So the relationship, right? Exactly. Trees are protections. They literally give us cover. So that is why it is so egregious when you go into different cities, in urban cities. Go to the south side, you see less tree coverages on the streets than you do the north side, right? And when you have less tree coverage, that heat bears down on concrete, because we have taken away the relationship to the land, put in a very dominant, a very harsh structure that we also still don't take care of, right? Because we have all these goddamn potholes everywhere. So the relationship to the environment around us gives an indication of just how solid the structures of society are. So then what are we building? How are we building it, and why? Because if we're trying to do something different, if we're actually trying to create new worlds, then what is your definition of new? Or are you just repeating the same things over and over again? So this is why the review is important. Let's weave some stories together about what society right now is reviewing. How many of y'all been seeing some of these these documentaries coming out lately? I just finished watching the Murdoch Family Dynasty documentary on Netflix, and I'm halfway through this kind of documentary, Louis Theroux's Manosphere, that British documentarian who went and looked and talked with all of these manosphere, what do you call them? What do you call them? Man bros, bromans? I don't know. I didn't know none of them. I ain't heard none of these man's names. So this whole documentary, I was like, who are you and who listens to you? But these two, the Murdoch Family Dynasty, and then this Manosphere documentary, I wanted to put that in conversation with this E.J. Johnson conversation that they had. I don't know E.J.'s pronouns, so excuse me. E.J. had with Carlos King on Carlos's podcast, and E.J. made the comment that they only date straight men. They don't date gay men, as they are the feminine man. That alongside this kind of resurgence that we're seeing in medicine right now, and in particular, and in sports, funny enough, of this kind of rise of interest in and focus on women's health and women's sports. These four things, when we weave them together, give a great example of this relationship between where we could go, but we have to be the ones driving the goddamn boat. Otherwise, we will repeat the same things over and over again, and we are seeing what that gets us when we are having it literally in our face via media right now. So, what do I mean by all of this? Institutions are falling, y'all. This is the big part of Neptune and Saturn conjunct coming out of Pisces into Aries. It dissolves things. Neptune dissolves things. When Saturn got next to it, 3 years ago off the bat in Pisces, it started to dissolve the things that we thought were solid in society around structures and systems. That alongside Uranus and Taurus, that was bulldozing the kind of infrastructure that we rely upon to construct those structures, right, was also breaking. Especially when it came to food systems, the whole gas thing that was going on initially a few years ago, right, when they were talking about how the truckers were about to go on strike and we were going to have increase in the cargo thing. We're constantly having these issues with the chain supply, the global chain supply, because what Uranus is Taurus is trying to get us to understand is that this idea that we were fed about globalization, the story, the belief system, the God of the globalized nation, the globalized future that we were fed in the early 2000s completely was a story. It wasn't real. There was no infrastructure to support this so-called globalization. It was just a pipe dream, literally, that blew up. And we're seeing the impact of this right now with this goddamn war, right, over there. And now they're playing with us. We got this strait going on right now. And, I get it, y'all. Folks are really being like, well, yeah, Iran has every right, because it does. Iran does have the right. If we're going to talk about Israel having the right to defend itself, then Iran has the right to defend its goddamn self. But what is being defended? What is actually being defended, though, and why? We got to be careful here right now. We got to be careful here. It's easy to buy into somebody else's story of revolution when they are sticking it to the motherfucker who's also sticking it to you. And at the same time, that is how you allow one patriarch to upend another one. Question really is, we are being asked, Pisces new moon, planting new seeds, but is that the dream that you want? Because reflecting upon it, and Mercury's been retrograde in Pisces for a minute. This is a long retrograde, okay? I want us to think about that too. Mercury's saying, let's back it on up. But what do you really want, though? What is the God? What is literally the God that you are laying the foundation of all this stuff on? Now, before you say, well, I don't believe in God, well, then that's also a part of the issue, because what is God? What is the construction that we are basing this idea of creation or creator on? The idea, the manifestation, the archetype of the creator, of a creator, heavily then influences how the creations of said creator then act on the mundane. So when your disciples, when your children of that God believe you so much that he brings you down onto this earth, right? There is a way you've got to be very careful that you are asking yourself, is that my God, the one that I am buying, the one that's my creator? Or is that another interpretation of the same energy that I am just used to because I've been groomed to accept abuse? When I watched Henry's Manosphere, I'm only halfway through because I was really into the Murdoch. And Murdoch Family Dynasty, y'all, I really recommend that because it is the embodiment of a racial capitalist family structure. It is the embodiment of family. It truly is, in all kinds of ways in these systems. And we see just how fucked up the conceptualization of family is in these systems through the Murdochs, right? But before then, when we think about the Manosphere, Thoreau is talking to a bunch of male influencers. And again, I never heard of any of these guys. One's only 23. He's like 23, mixed race, black guy from England, daddy not there. And this all comes out in the documentary. So spoiler alerts, I guess, too. Spoilers. But really the point of this Manosphere is he's talking to this first guy. I think his name is HS, 23 years old as well. Very, very just like the embodiment of that bro. I go to the gym. I have all these fancy cars, right? I do what do they call it? Online betting, and I do online stocks, and I'm going to show you how to be just like me. You just got to pay me $49.99 a month and come on my Twitch and get real education. Now I was thinking, who's going to do this? Well, apparently a lot of folks do this. A lot of folks pay somebody $50 a month to tell them basically how to sell themselves a bunch of one-liners. Because the guys that were fiending after these bros, these male influencers, were, to me, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not actually saying this to be like, oh, got you. It came out. It came out so strong. To me, they were little kids looking for a parent. And this is what made them this image of like this alpha guy who has all these women, right? But it's also conservative values, but also the only way you can make your money is by bringing women who are half clothed, who work usually either as IG models or OnlyFans girls, right? You need a woman's body and you need women's labor in order to actually be an alpha man, to prove how much of an alpha you are, right? But at the same time, you want to talk about conservative values and how you think all of them, they are disgusting. HS, as he literally has a influencer house full of women who are OnlyFans stars, he is saying to their face how disgusting he thinks this practice is and how much, it goes against all of his ideals, because his woman wouldn't be out here hoeing, and his kid better not be gay. Not his kid. This is what he's saying in the documentary, y'all, right? Well, at the same time saying, but it's all business. So I just take a cut of these girls' profits, and they get to use my platform to blow themselves up. Baby, you a pimp. Baby, all you selling is pimping. That is all you doing, wrapped up in some so-called alpha male. Ain't shit about this new. But we must reflect upon the ways that the society has restructured itself to have these so-called young, because he's only 23, young male influencers thinking they hit the jackpot and got something new, and all they've done is gone down the MLM pipeline. Because all they doing, this is nothing more than a scam. Because his whole thing is built upon having to be online streaming, getting more extreme, but again, always needing a woman, always needing women's bodies as the center, as the commodity, because you have nothing to show for yourself. And I actually say this with love. What the hell is the point of you being an alpha male when the only way you can be an alpha male is to sell to other men how to be alpha males, as all of y'all motherfuckers are broke? Make it make sense, y'all. Make it make sense. You saying you got all this money. You saying you all cool. You all chill. This is how you live it. And everything you are selling is nothing more than IG hooks. It's like, you know what it's like, y'all? It's like Tumblr. It's like Tumblr met Twitter and had a baby with IG, and it popped out into a man bro. And y'all pay $50 a month to hear that shit. Just go on IG, y'all. I'm being serious, or YouTube, and at least you'll save your money before you red pill yourself. But it makes sense, though. It makes sense in a society that doesn't reflect, that just regurgitates itself, right? And then there was another guy. This guy, now I've seen clips of him because he's been on clips and like TikTok and stuff. I'm not even sure his ethnicity. I'm not sure if he's Southeast Asian or he ain't white. Is all I gotta say. He ain't white. But he sure likes to puff himself up. What's this man's? Oh, Myron Gaines. Myron Gaines. I had to write this stuff down, y'all, because I was like, who are these people again? And who is believing this shit? Another one. You got this podcast. He's like really extreme right wing, alt right. Don't listen to this shit, right? Okay. I'm only talking about it because it's in the documentary. But then the documentary was weird because it exposed behind the scenes. When Thoreau's talking to him and his girlfriend walks in, because these men actually do have girlfriends too. The girlfriend walks in and she's literally cracking up. She's like, well, this is a persona of his, but behind the scenes, he's something different. And then as Thoreau is asking him more questions, the facade quickly cracks. He goes from, oh, yeah, she knows that I might have more than one wife, to him like, well, if I decide to, I'm not sure if I really want to have more than one. Like, it quickly shifted, right? And you could see a crack. There was a crack in the veneer. And then he's saying all this as he's holding a poodle, a white poodle that's got pink bows in its head. Okay? Then he gives it to his girlfriend and he says, oh, yeah, I need you to go help me clean the back room. So the facade, right? And as I'm watching it, I'm like, you have no idea who you are. Like, this is a script that you're playing. You think this is what it means to be a man in this society that is quote unquote successful. But again, his podcast, his show, the next scene is him sitting around with his co-host and they're literally interviewing a bunch of, again, IG and OnlyFans women. And they're basically humiliating them. But the only reason why they're on is because those women are the reason why people are watching and listening to these men talk about nothing and nonsense. So again, you need a woman's body. You need women's bodies. You need women's work. You need their work that they're doing with their bodies on your podcast, on your show, to have any kind of income, to have any kind of clout, to literally even say that you are this alpha man. So then what is the real story behind this? Right? So when we're talking about the structures and systems, y'all, and the reflection piece, and we're seeing the documentaries, we're seeing the media, we're seeing the entertainers. This is Pisces. Pisces is the illusion. It's entertainment, right? It's entertainment. So then it would make sense that entertainment in the time of Mercury retrograde, next to this North Node of what it means for the collective, right, to have to think about writing a new contract. Well, we need to review the contract that we were already in. And so what does it say about the women who participate? That's what people are asking in the comments, right? Well, it says a lot. It actually reflects completely upon the ways in which we are structurally groomed into the society to buy into certain roles. So let's go to the family and let's go to the Murdochs. Because I think the Rupert Murdoch's Family Dynasty documentary will give us some insights. That shit was fascinating in a very disgusting way. But it's so telling, right? I watched Succession. Because I was also highly disgusted, but it was also really indicative of the American way. And I'm actually glad I watched Succession first and then watched this documentary, because Succession as a show that is literally mirrored off of the Murdoch family influenced the Murdoch's decision to actually then finally make a succession plan, after they saw the episode in which old boy in Succession croaks in that plane, and then the whole thing is put into chaos because he refused to actually name a successor. They say in the documentary, again, spoiler alerts, sorry y'all, spoiler alerts, but it doesn't matter, watch it anyway. They say in the documentary that after they saw the folks in that team, Murdoch team, saw that episode, they immediately got on the phone and on emails and said, we need a plan. Don't tell me stories don't change shit. Don't tell me stories don't influence the reality. The sacred and mundane are always in a conversation, y'all. That show got that family to realize that you will die. You are not immortal, Rupert. You are not some god on earth. Here we go back to God again. Here comes God once again, right? The sacred is in the mundane. So how do we bring the sacredness out of the mundane? You got to own your body and realize that the body is finite. Realize that the body has needs. Realize that the body is here for a certain amount of time. Here we go back to time again. What is your relationship to time? And how is that showing up in the way your body operates? We can tell time. And when we stop trying to mark it and control it on a page and actually start to be present and embody it in the body in the present day. Because your body will tell you exactly just what time it really is, right? So that storyline told Rupert and his team, baby, you gonna die. So who is next in your line? Well, then let's backtrack it, though. Let's backtrack it, because what is a family? What is a family when that family is constructed around a business? Wow, we already know. We get the monarchs, right? The British Empire, the British monarchy, one of the longest standing ones to date, is also called the firm. The family is a firm. It's an institution. Institutions are falling, y'all. So what will take their place? The institutions that we know are actually predicated upon the family structure. This is why I'm so adamant about us rethinking what family means. What is the family structures that we are trying to construct? Because that lays the foundations for the structures and systems of society. That lays the foundations of how we even understand what those structures are and why, and the embedded nature of what care then really means. When you understand care via family as an institution that needs absolute control, so therefore you must be the one controlling at all times that floor, well, then how the hell can care be there? It's not about care, it's about power. Power via control. So you use the family, you use reproduction, you use blood as a mechanisms of control. So when you get into and you disrupt that bloodline, all hell gets loose, because that story, that construction of somehow a purity, somehow this separation from the lowly masses can no longer hold true. So then we see that reproduced, though, over and over again in different ways. We got to be careful. I say conservative values show up in all kinds of ways. In purity culture, and this idea of being pure, and this idea of purity of the blood and who is and is not a particular type of identity based upon their percentages of blood, regardless of whether anything else connects them to said family, to said culture. So what are the family structures we are constructing, y'all? Because blood is not the only way we have ever done lineage. But it is one of the main ways that those in monarchical power have designated themselves as somehow above everybody else. Therefore, they have the right of abode to then take us and use us as their pawns. So this is the structure of the British Empire. I need to remember that. This is the structure of the British monarchy, which then influences the British Empire, which has then influenced the construction of the British state and its aftermath of that Commonwealth. So all of those nations that are now British Commonwealths that speak English as a first language are still influenced by the structure of the family that is very much institutionalized. Why does this matter? Let's talk about Murdoch then. So Murdoch is a family man, supposedly. Australian. This actually matters. An Australian man who's coming up is trying to connect with the white working class, because he understands the elite and they are not to be trusted. It is the common man, right? And he is a champion for the common man. He is the one who is ensuring that the common man has his values, his ideology, his perspective, his story centered. So what does he do? He starts buying up the things that tell stories, which are newspapers. That becomes the beginning of it, then media. And this is very important because media is foundation to nation building. It is the print media that helps us create imagined communities that really then accelerates the construction of the modern nation state as it was being constructed in response to anti-monarchy. Okay, I want you to remember that. So he builds this, he starts to build in Australia. Then he makes his way to London, builds some more, buys, acquires. Then he moves to New York. And now he is essentially taken a global, and also in Asia, he's taken a global stake in telling a different story of the common man. And you might be like, well, maybe it's because he's also part of that common man. No, he's not. He actually came from wealth. He lived in a house, basically a plantation in Australia that had 30 goddamn rooms, 30 bedrooms in the main house. He is somebody who grew up around his father who also owned newspapers. So he comes from generational wealth too. But he designates himself as the embodiment of the one who can speak for the white working class. And how does he do that? He does that through sensationalism. He becomes the embodiment of showing what populism is. This is all populism, y'all. This is all he is a populist. And this idea, right, that the common people are in opposition to the perceived elites requires a charismatic leader. It requires somebody that can sell back your trauma and your hate to you as somehow liberation. And the way that he does it is through this weird mix, again, of conservatism, but also sleaze. Because the newspapers he acquired are things like News of the World, and if you've ever remembered News of the World before it had to fold because of the backhanded things it was doing, right? What the News of the World did was that it made its name off of, again, sensationalized kind of tabloid news, but also showing on page 3 women's boobs. It was always a naked woman who's topless, and that was really one of the big draws for that newspaper, even as they were also shouting down traditional conservative family values. Does this sound familiar? And so you think about, well, how does this maintain itself, though? Because it's contradictory. So on one hand, you are saying you are for the common man, yet nothing about you is common. You have there's no actual praxis. There is no reality of you engaging when you were young with the common man. But you understand what it means, though, to have power in these systems. In Australia, an embodiment, the kind of arm, the child that did not get away of that British Empire. Because remember, the United States, we said, fuck it. We're going to do our own thing. We're going to make our own fucked up structures, right? But we're going to do it under our own banner. Britain really clamped down, and Australia and them were just like this. So the ideas of family, the ideas of structure, and the ideas of family values are heavily shaped, again, by the construction of family through that British monarchy. So it's an institution, it's a firm. So Murdoch starts acquiring more and more, and it's selling, it's getting big, because now he comes to New York and he gets the Daily News. Or the New York Post, the New York Post. And there he really takes off, because now this is the 1970s. And he wants to appeal again to the white working class. Now, the conceptualization of the white working class, though, in the UK, and its counterparts of Australia, and I would say New Zealand as well, but especially Australia, the construction of that is a bit different. Actually, I would argue very different than the way in which he was trying to construct it in the US. But both are built upon these systems of hierarchy, of a white man patriarch always being on top. But in these structures, right, the white male patriarchy never takes responsibility for its own actions, so it's always a perpetual victim. So in this kind of power victimhood dynamic storyline, right, he finds an opening. He finds a way to what? Con ya. Because all of this is nothing more than a goddamn con. It's a con to get a whole globe to pay for and support the lineage of a few fucking families. Again, this is the monarchy. This is the monarchy. You conned a bunch of folks over space and time to have them believe that somehow your blood is blue, somehow it's superior and special only to y'all and you. So you inbreed yourself so much, and you do so, and you keep acquiring things, but you have no real skills. There's no real value in that, especially when you're not really protecting your people. So then you get the other people, the population, to buy into this idea that they support you in some way, right? Think about that. So now you've got the Murdoch. So he's like, I'm going to be the voice for those who are not represented in the U.S. And of course, we know white men are not represented. We know white men are the biggest victims of everything in society. So the 1970s hit. You get the blackout in New York. You get folks breaking into stuff, quote unquote, taking things. They call it looting. But who is the face of looting? Who's the face of looting? Because while other newspapers are using that as an example to talk about structural inequality in New York, right? What they do, what the New York Post does, Murdoch says, law and order, law and order. You see all these hoodlums? You see, this is why white men can't get ahead. This is why the white working class can't get ahead, because you got these hoodlums taking things. They were buying off the welfare trope, and it's sold. Also, sex. Because mixing with all those tabloids and all of this rhetoric, right, you get women's bodies still. And he builds a dynasty off of so-called being the voice, the real voice of truth, right? Then he gets Fox News. He makes Fox News. He constructs a whole new structure, y'all. He built a whole new cable network. People said it was impossible. Only the big three. He said, let me show you what I can do when I believe in myself so much, because I believe myself to be God, because I am the head of this household. I am the one that's atop of this structure, right? That is modeled off of another structure of complete dominance. I can do what the fuck I want to do, and he can. That's the power of imagination, y'all. You got to believe your own goddamn story sometimes, and then figure out the resources that you can bring together to make it in reality. But you can't do it the same way as them, right? He was able to do it because he already had an in. He had an in. He already had his daddy's money, just like this president we got right now. But they sell the story to those they need to fleece so that you give up your rights, your resources, your money, your body to it. It's an offering, y'all. So he's built an empire, and he has all these kids. I think he's got his fourth wife, right? The first wife, he had one kid. Second wife, he had three. Third wife, he had two. Now, all these kids. And this is his legacy. Legacy is important. What comes after you? Who comes after you? Who says your name? What says your name? But that is not our family. But the family in this construction is not about nurturing and care. It's about who's going to lead my dynasty. Who's going to take on my name? If you read the very first part of Harry's book, right? The Prince Harry's book, right? The very first part of it. There's actually the very, very, very first, a prelude, when him and his daddy and his brother are in the family garden. That's also the family cemetery. His daddy takes him around and he speaks the name of those who are in the grave. And it's actually very spiritual, because he is reminding his kids, right? The king right now, Charles, was reminding his kids of where they came from and what the actual point of them being in this family is. It's an institution. You are not you. You are part of this. I need you to remember that. Institutions are falling. So now Murdoch believes that he is God. He's like, I'm going to be doing this for forever, right? And so he's testing his kids. He's trying to play with his kids. And his eldest are actually girls, women. His very first one says, I don't want to do shit with any of this. So it's really his three kids with the second wife that are the crux of the story. And of those three kids, the first one is a woman. And she does what many eldest daughters do, overperforms. She is the one that brings, right? Grace, it sounds like a lot of our families. Let's keep going. So as the eldest daughter, she is the one that had the idea of bringing Pop Idol from the UK into the US and calling it American Idol. She's also one of the ones that turned around bought a few Australian newspapers and media outlets, turned them around, sold them for a profit. I'm not saying any of this was done like up to bar or well, but she was able to perform. But the problem was she a woman. No matter what she did, her daddy literally said, well, I think maybe, you got to make a decision. Are you going to keep having more kids or go to work? And she's like, I'm doing both. But then when he said he would not see her outside of that, she then resigned. So it goes down to the other two. But the other two aren't really that bright. The one is a daddy's boy, so he does exactly what his daddy says, Lachlan. And the other one, James, wants to do his own thing. And funny enough, he had made his own record label at one point. I had no idea about this either, but his original record label is one of the ones that folks like Mos Def initially were signed to. That's what money gets you. So over time, what Murdoch does, Rupert, is that he tests his kids. He's got to see who's going to carry on his legacy, not the legacy, his. And his legacy is one of conservatism. He says Fox must always remain conservative because that is the perspective, that is the legacy, that is the kind of story that we must preserve, because he really does believe he is doing something that is noble, that is holy, that is sacred in nature, ensuring that the other side of the story is being told. Because he literally says throughout, and his ex-wife also says, and his kid Lachlan, who now is taking control, says that they are here for truth, right? Their truth, nothing but the truth, according to them. So they set up a trust. A trust is set up by the second wife because she's like, I don't trust none of this shit, so I want to make sure that my kids have a stake in all of this. Long story short, watch the documentary, but at the end of the day, that trust then gets used and reused and manipulated. And next thing you know, in 2023, when the whole family shit is brought to the public because they're in this scandal of, with who? Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, because their newspaper journalists were tapping their phones, were doing illegal wire things. Like, it was complete and actual illegal shit going on. It exposed not just the business, but the family. Because in discovery, right, there was ways that everything got brought to the table, including text messages and the like. And what those messages showed was a family so dysfunctional that James, the youngest brother, right, had to sit there and essentially wade through thousands of pages of reading his family completely talk shit about him. So this is a family that's a business that now it becomes our business because the two are intertwined. So the family is more like a brand, just like who? The Kardashians. We have made families brands. We have made families, right? The construction, the institution that then is the embodiment of power, of these ideas, right? Of what the embodiment of the structures are. But is it even true? Is any of it true? This is a rich white man who basically wants to ensure that his ideas go down in history, and he needs disciples. He needs willing participants to spew his goddamn cosmology, his ideology. He is trying to make himself a god. But what happens when gods come to earth? Well, you're going to have to be embodied and realize that this whole mundane thing ain't necessarily that easy. So as his family has been brought to the table and it's all out in the open, right? Now his son has full control, but at what cost? His son the second son has everything he always wanted, but now there is no actual family structure anymore. The siblings don't talk to each other. So is it worth it? We shall see. We shall see. Because here is the other twist to the plot. The siblings all got bought out. The ones that had a vested interest in the vote, they could have voting power, veto power, so it could have really shifted the kind of ideology of Fox, and Fox News in particular. But there's two girls from the Marriage 3 that are hanging out in the wings who initially didn't have any voting power. In the new trust, they still are on it with no voting power. But the family, the white guy, Lachlan, who's now in charge because Rupert did step down. He's 95, 96 and realizes you might actually die because you are human. He only has control until 2050. And I think he'll be, 70 at the time they said in the documentary? But his younger sisters, who are half Asian and both women, will be much younger. So the story continues. The story continues. Because when your family becomes a business, and that business is one of backstabbing, one of power, one of corruption, one of feeling as if you have to always prove yourself to a patriarch who moves that floor anytime he feels emotional, right? The strategy that you deploy is not actually very solid. It will get you short-term results, but not long-term kind of value. So we got to come back to 2050, y'all, and see what this family saga continues. But I'm going to tell you something right now. I bet you there's going to be much more kind of dealings going on. Because right now we're being asked to write a new story. We're being asked to plant new seeds around what kind of foundations are required for us to be able to care for ourselves in society. Care is not soft. Care is actually something that is hard to do consistently because it requires you showing up for yourself. It's a devotion to the self. It's a devotion to other selves because that's what lays the foundations of these societies. And so we're going to have to then ask ourselves if the family structures that we have now, right? And again, I gave the example of Murdoch, which is really another example of the monarchy, which is itself is nothing more than an example of a family that sold itself out to the highest bidder of a concept that is running its course because you can only cannibalize yourself so much. The human body tells us that we actually need diversity in our bloodlines in order for our bloodlines to maintain themselves. But when you are incestuous, both biologically and ideologically, you will literally retard yourself, and I mean that in the scientific way, not in an ableist way. There is a way in which you are removing more of your humanity as you are replicating something that becomes more inhuman over time. So the family structures that we are required to place ourselves in, to confine ourselves in, to box ourselves into, are making us less human in nature. If we really think about it, all of us. Right? It removes this idea of care. It removes this idea of having to realize that relationships require something more than a half-ass effort. Your comfort cannot always be centered, but do you even know what is comfortable to you? Because in these structures, we have been sold comfort as somehow efficiency, but in order to have that efficiency, you must be working your ass off to afford it. So how comfortable really are you? And because we are told to do it for yourself, we're told bootstrap it up because people like Murdoch sells a story that somehow they came from nothing and made a global empire, even though that is nothing more than a smoke and mirrors because it's nothing more than a fucking Nepo baby, right? When you buy the story of your oppressor and that becomes the way that you understand how you're supposed to do this thing called life, your identity, you then literally rob yourself of your own life. Why do that, y'all? That's what I think it means to take yourself, to take back and save yourselves, to save ourselves. We have to save ourselves by figuring out what the hell it means to be in family with one another, to create a family, to create structures. And the only way we're going to be able to do that, one of the ways we're going to be able to do that is figuring out what these bodies actually are, what they need, how we understand how they move and function. And so another part of what we're going to be seeing, we got Aries season coming, and we're really seeing this right now already with Saturn and Neptune in Aries and Venus being there. We're going to see the rise. We already are seeing it of a focus on women's health, on queer health, and actually, funny enough, on women's sports. And we're seeing this rise in kind of women's sports bars only. Like in Chicago, we have one already, Babes. I just did a pop-up there yesterday. And there's another one opening up this summer through the Lesbian Sports Club, I believe. The Lesbian Social Club, the woman that runs that social club is opening up a physical bar up north as well in Wrigleyville. And it's going to be focused on women's sports. And that's really interesting because we also are seeing this rise in the interest of like women's basketball. We just had the Winter Olympics and the Leo child. Oh, I forgot her name. That won the skating, right? And all these kind of other representations of sports figures and the interest in women's sports overall. Sports actually is really important, whether you like it or not, because the sports of a society, of a nation, dictate again and also show us, just like the family structures does, our sports structure shows the ways that we understand things like collaboration, cooperation, care, entertainment. If your sports are bloody and violent, if they require bodies to go through violence, to be entertained, and then that's seen as somehow not just enlightening but funny, right? When that becomes the center, and then those sports then lay the foundation of representation of your nation. And then that influences how people engage and understand their identities, especially being a man or being a woman, right? Sports then will tell you a whole hell of a lot about what's going on too. And right now we know our sports are also really fucked up. between the American football and the constant concussions and the ways that messes with kids. Let's be real, kids who then are trying to grow up into adults whose brains have been beaten around so much, but then they are literally thrown out after they are no use to the moneymakers of those teams, right? To the boxing, to shit, even like the hockey, all of these sports that require this kind of constant beating of the body, a constant pushing, a constant moving away, right, from the embodiment of your spirit as a way to entertain. Well, then that really reflects upon the way that we understand violence and care in a society. So now this focus on more women's sports. And when I say this, right, I'm not automatically saying that women's sports is somehow always going to be this softness and caring. I'm not making this binary, y'all. But it's a very different way in which women athletes are trained. It's a different way in which folks who are in women's sports are have to engage. The money's not always there, right? The resources aren't there, so you got to make do with what you got. So there is a way that embedded within these patriarchal structures, when you are trying to do your own thing, you have to figure it out. It's literally embedded mutual aid. We call it PTO, and moms and dads bringing potlucks for their kids when they're going traveling. Right? We call it fundraising. And if you in Chicago, I wish them back. It makes me nervous when the babies are out in the summertime and they fundraise for Bud Billiken and they on the freeways, on the highways, right in the intersections. And you see the parents watching as the kids go out and do a little dance and showing what their routines are going to be. And they're going around to the cause, right? That's embedded in the goddamn structure because there's no really resources for them. So if that then becomes pushed to the forefront, right? We got to be careful then, right? We got to be careful women's sports that we don't try to make it into the new men's sports. We got to see it as a different way to understand how we engage with the body, entertainment, and sport and teams. A different way to engage with that, which means as we're seeing this rise of women's sports, we're also seeing a rise in different ways of understanding health and medicine in the body by not centering the straight, white, abled 18 to 35-year-old white man as a demographic that is being engaged with in all kinds of experiments and tests and things and the like. So we're also seeing a lot more interest in hormone replacement therapy, a focus on what really does happen to the body when folks who have wombs go through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. A lot of focus on queer and trans health, on kids' health, especially queer kids' health. We're going to see the rise of that because it's the only way it's going to make sense for how we combat I'll maybe be frank with you, new diseases. Aries, Neptune coming up into Aries. There's a kind of coming up from the deep waters into the head, right? So shit that this thing's going to thaw. So as things thaw, we're seeing the ice caps, right? We're constantly getting new land masses emerging. It's beautiful, but also what emerges with new land masses and when things thaw are the other microbes as well. So as we're going to be confronted with different types of, and this is not to scare, this is just the damn reality of climate change, y'all. This is the reality of actions that humans have taken or not taken. We're going to have to then re-examine what it means to have care, what our everyday needs are. So when we think about that and put that in conversation with this new moon, what seeds are you really planting that allow us to have radically new futures? And then what will you then do 2 days later, literally, to bring those dreams into reality? What is the first thing you will do? The action. Fire is here. The head is going to be hot. By April, there's going to be almost everything in Aries. Literally everything in Aries minus Uranus, Jupiter, and Pluto. So then how do you work with that fire? How do you work with the energy that's coming through so it doesn't burn you up? This is where devotion comes in and ritual comes in. So as Pisces North Node is there and Mercury is hanging out right now, today, okay? As Mercury is hanging out today, what needs to be spoken that is emerging from the deep waters? Because Pisces is having a conversation with Cancer. All the water, all the elements, y'all, when you look at a chart, they're always going to be in a trine with each other. So the water houses will trine, the air houses will trine, the fire houses will trine, the earth houses will trine. It's because of how they're located. So trines are these kind of harmonious conversations, usually. Between Cancer and Pisces, with Jupiter being in Cancer, there's an expansion. What's coming from the deep waters, what's coming from your feet, y'all, what's the memories, what's lineage, what is coming up to the head, what needs to be spoken. What needs to be spoken, because it's Mercury, it's the voice, it's the throat. Right? So what needs to come up? And I want you to take that seriously. What needs to come up over the next few days? What is coming up today, tomorrow, that needs to be grappled with, reckoned with, as a way for you to understand what your foundations are. Okay? Because as we go into Aries, as we go into fire, it's going to get hot with these nation states. They're going to be basically nuke swinging around. Instead of dick swinging, they're nuke swinging everything around. They're trying to figure out who the new patriarch will be. So you got to be careful. You got to be careful with these nation states, y'all. It's just substituting one ain't shit motherfucker for another. So what do we actually want? Besides seeing our oppressor get its ass handed to him, I get it, but that's a short-term fix that does not engage a long-term problem. So, attraction then. What are you actually attracted to? What about if you have listened to the kind of reports coming out about what Iran is saying they will do and whether it's true or not, right? What is your attraction to it or repulsion from it? And get more curious with that. Because that attraction is getting to this kind of like, well, fuck it all this. Yes, fuck it all this. But then if you blow something up, what comes next? I need you to remember that, y'all. That's what it means for us to save ourselves. That's the responsibility that Saturn is saying that we have to do. Okay? Because if institutions are falling, what will take their place? And so there's a way that I want us to kind of really get into this idea of how do we allow play to become a big part of the strategy making? And when I say play, I had a pop-up last night about babes, as I said. And it was really interesting. It was packed. I had a full 9 readings back to back to back. That's a lot. But there was a recurring conversation that was happening amongst everybody that I'm seeing louder. Where is your relationship to your creativity as a way for you to start to trust your knowing? Because that's your inner child. That's the inner child that the patriarch in these family structures has suppressed, because that child is now property. That child is a property of the patriarch. So where have you accidentally put a patriarch over your own inner child? Right? Where have you accidentally done it? Because we all do it. We all do it, trying to conform, trying to fit in, trying to not do too much, trying to figure out, well, maybe this time it'll be a little bit different if I just give it more time. And if you're asking yourself, well, can I really do it? Can I give myself the permission? Yes. Then if you need somebody else to say you have permission to do it, then I'll give it to you. But you have to access that play. And I'm saying that because fire is here. Aries is exalted. The sun is exalted in Aries, but it's at home in Leo. And Leo is going to start to get real loud later on this year when that south node moves from Virgo into Leo. And Jupiter being in Cancer is expanding, right? The mother, expanding that kind of care, expanding the moon aspects of us. But then Jupiter will also move into Leo, expanding then this patriarch, expanding our heart, expanding the creativity in us. While at the same time, the South Node is there on the other end of that Leo house, asking us to release something. So as Jupiter is asking us to expand, and then the South Node is asking us to release, all in the sign of the sun, the sign of Leo, the sign of the father, the sign of the child, the sign of creativity, of vision, of light. If the father has not allowed the child to come out, What is going to be lost is the way in which that patriarch has shown up in you, has shown up in all of us. And also we are going to see the loss, the fall of patriarchs that we somehow gave our authority up to, our light up to. So if the patriarch is gone and the child is out, who is the parent of the child? Because the child still needs parenting. This is the family, y'all. This is the family structure. So if the child needs parenting because that patriarch is having to, right, it's going to get looked at. And we see over and over again, the patriarch is really not as strong as he claims to be. He requires your offering. It's an illusion, y'all. It's an illusion. Murdoch was not white working class, but he used white working class bodies and monies and resources to ensure that his family is secured for generations to come. Why aren't you mad at that shit? Direct your anger to where it needs to actually go. Trump is not white working class. He did not come from nothing. His daddy literally gave him money and that man can't hold on to it. Nothing he makes actually is successful, but that doesn't matter in these racial capitalist streets. All you gotta do is be a good scammer and know where your next trick is. And when we see that articulating itself in its new way, in this so-called manosphere way, it literally is nothing more than a bunch of men who are being groomed to be pimps by other pimps. And then you have the women who have been groomed, right, to see themselves as owning their own bodies, but owning their own bodies via commodifying it for someone else. And I'm not even really judging it, y'all. There's a complicated thing with that, too. It's real complicated with that, right? But we have to ask ourselves, if you working with your body and your body becomes the site of your workings, right? Make sure that the person that was with you actually does see you as a fucking human being then and not another commodity. So even with Aries season, this Rise of Women's Health and Sports, we're also going to be re-examining our relationship to sex. I say this, it's Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. People say Mars is sex, but we have Venus hanging out here. We've got Saturn here. We got Neptune. Neptune going to be as well, won't float in the waters. What are we attracted to? What is attraction? Right? What is the kind of ways that we understand that? Because that really heavily plays into our understanding of relationships and what kind of relationships we are told to privilege and why, how we show up in relationships, and our understanding of what even it means to relate to ourselves, one another, and again, other forms of life that we require in order to be sustained. Remember that tree at the very beginning of this conversation. So the relationship comes back. And we're realizing right now, again, if we are trying to plant new seeds and we need new stories, therefore new cosmologies, therefore new gods, again, it's not about whether you believe in it or not. It's about the construction of a creator and creation and what it means to be creating. Then our understanding of this kind of binary way of structuring things is also what's cracking. And we're really seeing this in this conversation with E.J. Johnson. It's my last kind of story weaving before we start to wrap this up. I don't know if y'all saw EJ and Carlos King conversation. I saw parts of it. I'm watching more of it. But I was really intrigued because it wasn't EJ. So basically EJ Johnson is the child of Magic Johnson. And again, I don't know EJ's pronouns. So that's why I'm using EJ's name or they. I just don't know. But they're femme. And EJ was saying how they only date straight men. And essentially it's because it's mainly straight men that rock with them. And now the people are blowing up online, their commentaries and, saying that doesn't make any sense. And, how this is the problem and he's a man. And so if he's having sex with another man, that means he's gay. And now we got the straight women coming in talking about how, see, this is the down low shit we're talking about, all this stuff, right? And I'm sitting here confused because what EJ is saying is not much different than the conversation that T.S. Madison had with Nene a few months ago. It's the same concept when T.S. was trying to explain it to Nene. Here's the thing, y'all. A lot of y'all ain't confused at all by what EJ's saying. It's actually not that confusing. What your confusion is in the idea that attraction is only through the lens of gay or straight. That's what's cracking. That's what's cracking. That's what you're confused by. Your confusion is lying in the structure of how we are taught how to understand ourselves, one another, and how we relate via attraction. Because what EJ's saying does make sense, y'all. It does make sense. Even if it don't make no goddamn sense, it does make sense in these nonsensical ass streets we call society. We call American Western society. Okay, it makes complete sense. People don't like femininity. People don't like femininity. Come on now. People, so of course, a highly feminine man, a highly feminine, someone who's not considering themselves trans, because EJ has not said that they are trans. So that's why I guess I can say a feminine presenting person, okay, in a very tall body, right? Who rocks with that kind of femininity? Who's attracted to that kind of femininity? Come on, y'all. Don't be obtuse. Don't be obtuse. The problem is the allegiance to the patriarch. The problem is thinking that if you genuflect to that man, that embodiment of that man enough, that somehow he will ever see you. The more you bend your back to a patriarch, the more he will ensure that he breaks that back and ensures that back is constantly broken, because it's your back that is needed in order to sustain that embodiment of that patriarch. So this is also, let's talk about the lesbians. Let's talk about the lesbians. Let's talk about it. And how masked lesbians, the studs, right, the bull daggers, the butches, how they are always over-sexualized many times. How that becomes the aesthetic of what people think it means to be with another woman, right? That you must be in this kind of mask femme presentation. So that when you talk about femme and queerness, Black femmes in particular, right? There's always this thing about, well, am I even being read as queer because I'm now being read as straight because I am feminine? Do you understand what I'm saying, y'all? There is a way that we don't understand how to engage with the energy of femininity and its articulation on the body. So what we do is we end up reproducing it in every interaction we have. You are not confused by what EJ said. You are confused by the binary of attraction. Period, y'all. Bend the concepts that have been bending us to its will. Because again, what has that construction of the rigidness gotten us? And now everybody once again becomes scientists. Now everyone's a goddamn biologist. You know how many goddamn videos I've seen of people saying, well, this is facts, this is facts, this is facts. X and X and X and Y. Yo, baby, if I gave you a piece of paper and I told you to run me a gamut, you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Right? The convenience of using Western logic via this idea of objectivity when it serves you shows just how non-objective Western knowledge foundations really are. Because you can move that goddamn floor anywhere you want. And all you gotta do is say, well, science said it. Well, at the same time, again, we're saying that no one can actually read the science to begin with because we got a literacy problem here. Even if you read the words on the page, you understand what the fucking words are actually saying. Exactly. Silly. This is silly, y'all. And I agree, Grace. We got bigger fish to fry. But do we want to fry that bigger fish? Because to fry that bigger fish, again, takes responsibility. This is what Saturn is really showing us. Saturn, Neptune, and Aries long term. Venus hanging out here. We're going to get this stellium coming up. The sun's going to be there. The moon's going to be there. We're going to get Mars there. We got Mercury going to hang out there. This is an ignition. This is igniting us and having us realize that we're going to have to take some responsibility and really ask ourselves, what is the foundation of everything that we constitute as being human? This is about the construction of the human, y'all. It's Aries. We have to really reconstruct it. So whose dreams are you using to dream? All right? Whose dreams are you using to dream? And what does a radically new vision look like? You're going to have to get into the feet of things. You're going to have to get into the foundation and the roots of things, the lineage of things, the family nature of things, the ways in which the family has structured and constructed and groomed you to believe that this is the identity for you, just as your foreparents were also constructed. So what happens if you reconstruct it? Well, this is why I keep saying you may be reconstructing a whole new family structure, a whole new concept of bloodlines. because you may be realizing that the people you've been calling upon, living and or dead, are actually not there for you because they don't know how to be. Because the family structure was constructed as a firm, as an institution, based upon and built upon the institution of the patriarch that is constructed off of that monarch that had to give up its line, had to give up its connection to relationships outside of itself in order to take on the monarchical power via that Christianity. So if institutions are falling and we're being asked to reconstruct them, and for the last 6 months, these new moons have been at the Cancerian degree of 28, saying that we're going to have to do it from all aspects of care and nurturing, because that is just how important family is for the construction of the human. Again, whether we like it or not, then what is the human we're constructing? Right? Play with that, okay? All right. Deconstruction. I'm going to get more into deconstruction and put that in relationship to hoodoo on Wednesday, this Wednesday, the 18th. I'm doing that class through Big Liz Conjure. It's going to start at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to put the information in the show notes. In that class, what I'm going to do is going to be breaking down the structures of society, right, that have confined us. So what is that? It's the body. We're going to talk about what does it mean to have a relationship? What is a relationship to the self, to ancestors and to the land? When we deconstruct the ways that we've been separated from those constructs. And in doing so, that's the foundations of hoodoo too. So if we have to deconstruct a relationship to a structure that has taken our life, well, then hoodoo was one example of a system that was constructed to ensure that we maintain that life. All right. So when they come into conversation, we can actually world build. So I'll be doing that on Wednesday, the 18th. Okay. And next week, I'll be doing astrology and hoodoo, working with the elements, working with mainly with fire. So come back for that. And finally, wait till the end of the show to say this, but speaking of review and what has come up for me after putting some time and effort for the past few years into it, I finally found out this weekend or late last week that my YouTube channel, I'm now be able to be a YouTube partner. Part of the YouTube partner program, which basically means my YouTube is finally monetized. It took me about 3-4 years of consistently showing up and putting in, my first show and now this show. But again, that's the devotion. You know what I'm saying? It was the devotion to the craft. And I'm saying it because I'm fucking proud of myself. We gotta also hype ourselves up, and I'm gonna hype myself up. I don't talk my shit enough. I'm talking my shit now. I did that. I did that on my goddamn own shit. It would have been nice to have had, honestly, some help. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm not being proud of like I did on my own. No, now I'm looking for some help. I would love to be able to have a producer, an editor, so that I got so many ideas. And there's a new show, a separate show that I want to do now that it is monetized. I'm going to be playing with. So stay tuned for that. But I wanted to say that. Thank y'all. I wanted to say I'm very proud of that. So I do have, if you're listening to this, I do have a membership tier on the YouTube. It's basically the same as my Groundscape on Patreon. So I know some people really like YouTube as a platform over Patreon. I totally understand that. So if you really like the show and you want to be able to have access to the full show and you don't necessarily want to do that through subscribing on Patreon, you can now subscribe on YouTube, okay? And so I will be having the full shows on both Patreon at the Groundscape level and higher, and then on my YouTube at the membership level, okay? And then again, more to come. And I'm going to be playing with that. I'm going to figure out how I can do joint lives, and I'm doing it messy. So this is also the South Node in Virgo. I'm doing this shit messy. I usually would have everything laid out and tested it and pre-tested it and retested it and done all this stuff to make sure it's perfect. Now I'm like, I ain't got all time. I ain't got that time. I'm trying to find both some contracts or part-time work alongside building this stuff and other things. So you're going to start seeing a couple of different things pop up on the Patreon. That's going to be lives. That is me playing with the YouTube as well. So I'm going to say that too. All right. And then this week I will be popping up on the Patreon though. You're going to see me throughout the week as I'm going to go through on the tarot, the lovers through the world. Okay. So if you happen to catch it, that's just a lecture I'll do. But those lectures will only be available on recording at the soundscape and higher. And then my landscape folks, you'll get access to the full kind of another version of that once I finish with it. Okay, so landscape and higher, you'll have access to it. I think that's it, y'all. All right, thanks. I was meandering today. Because last thing I'm gonna say, fuck it. Last thing I'm gonna say is this. When you watch things, this is another way. Okay, I know, Shay, I'm a mess. When you're watching things from now on, right? Pay attention to what's coming up. So how I use documentaries and different shows and stuff, and putting in conversation with like trends. Do that for yourself, all right? Because it'll also help you figure out the story that is being told currently, so that you get clear about the story you're telling yourself about what's to come and how you're world building, right? It's another way to learn critical engagement of the present moment, to learn how to trust yourself. And again, these documentaries, these movies that are coming out, pay attention to the similar themes. Pay attention to the way your body feels, right? Pay attention to the initial commentary and what people jump on, right? And then take a step back and just observe. Embody it, and then figure out then how that can help you pivot in the ways that you are thinking about, well, then what are you trying to build for yourself? All right. Come back on the Patreon. I'll be talking more about that this week and next as we go through the tarot. Okay. All right, y'all. That's it. Keep dreaming, keep exploring, because it's through the dreamscapes we can say the dreams we can bring. Oh, Jesus Christ. Y'all know what I mean. I am done. This fucking retrograde between the goddamn tech and my mouth. I'm done. I'll see y'all next week. Love ya. Bye. We don't know how to treat God, because we don't know how to treat women. Black women, black womanhood, how that is deified via disrespect. Because we don't know how to treat God, so black womanhood is disrespected. Yet that is what is called love.
We don't know what love looks like, so it looks like we're always doing it wrong. We don't know what love feels like, so it feels like we're always doing it wrong. That's what I saw my mama now do. That's what she saw my mama now do. Trying to put two and two together. That's what I saw my daddy now do. That's what he saw his daddy now do. Trying to put two and two together.
We don't know how to treat God, because we don't know how to treat children. The closest form to the Creator, what we call God, our template on how to connect to love. They bring one and one together to make a third. So what if we rewrote the equation?
That's what she saw my mama now do. Trying to put two and two together. That's what I saw my daddy now do. That's what he saw his daddy now do. Trying to put two and two together.
See, 2 plus 2 needs to be pulled apart into 1 plus 1, which can equal 1 or 3. 2 bodies come together and make another. 1 plus 1 is 3. Multiple bodies together form collectives. 1 plus 1 is 1. We have always been more than one love equation. You place an offering at the altar of an oracle, the ones who speak truths to help us learn what love is. So what offering have you given a child lately? A woman, a femme, the ones who provide yet do not receive, but are meant to receive by those who claim to be providers. Because if 1 + 1 is only 2, then where does the collective or do the children go? We are more than one love equation, so we must rewrite it to fit the occasion.